Monkey business!
Hello Year 11, case study time again. This time we're going to look at an economic development case study. We're going to look at an aid project which is located in Uganda and Tanzania, and we're looking at comic relief. Okay? Uganda and Tanzania are located in Africa, in Central Africa. Isn't that right, Sydney?
I always thought that it was just Africa. I thought it was all the countries there. I'm talking about the countries there were all just Africa.
That's very painful there, Sydney. Africa is a whole continent full of little countries and some bigger countries, and Uganda and Tanzania are located in Central Africa, Sydney. Okay?
Wow.
Well done. Thank you, Sydney. Now, the reason that aid was required in Uganda and Tanzania was because some of the problems that those two countries were facing. First of all, in Uganda, farmers were unable to feed their families because of the poor conditions there, because of the drought and the poor soil quality. And that meant that children in families were having to work on the farms and not go to school, which obviously had a really negative impact on their education. Also in Uganda, there was a real problem with malaria, this mosquito that causes lots of deaths across the whole African continent. And many children every single day die in Uganda because of malaria, and they haven't simply got the medicine to try and solve those problems.
Where I come from, in the jungle, I don't suffer from mosquitoes
That's good, Sydney.
because they can't bite through my fur.
Good. Thank you, Sydney.
Just thought I'd share that with you.
It's brilliant. There you are, Year 11. Finally, in Tanzania, poor healthcare means that 1 in 7 children die before their 5th birthday. So not only in Uganda is there problems with children dying, but also in Tanzania as well, a very high infant mortality rate. You're right, Sydney?
No, I thought I was going to ask you, does that mean the infant mortality rate? And you've already answered my question.
Oh, infant mortality, the number of children dying before their 1st birthday. Thank you, Sydney. We've already mentioned that. Well done.
Here, kids, I think he knows his stuff, don't you?
Thank you, Sydney. So, what are Comic Relief trying to do in Uganda and Tanzania? First of all, they've given small loans, small amount of money, to farmers in Uganda and Tanzania to help them improve their farms and to produce more food and more crops, whilst also sending their children to school. Malaria nets, which are really quite cheap, about £5 per net, have been given to people in Uganda to try and cut down on the number of children dying and people dying from malaria mosquitoes. Finally, Comic Relief has given money to a Tanzanian charity called Ifrakara to improve their hospitals. They've done this by educating and teaching midwives how to work within those hospitals and providing electricity and better sanitation and water.
Is that the same as the midwives that we have in our country?
Kind of the same, yeah, and the education and the ideas that they're giving them have come from this country as well, Sydney.
Oh.
Thank you. How has this actually helped Uganda and Tanzania? It's helped in a couple of ways. First of all, it's allowed farmers to buy seeds and grow crops. It's also resulted in a lower infant mortality rate, less deaths. It's reduced healthcare, and also the number of adults dying, the death rate, has also decreased. Finally, we come to Sydney's favourite part of each case study, which is this bit here. Sydney, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Oh, good. Sydney, you've gone to sleep there. You ready, Sydney?
Yes, I'm ready.
Here we go. We're talking about how sustainable this aid project is. Isn't that right?
It's that big word again. I've forgotten it again.
Sustainable, Sydney.
Thank you.
That's okay. These ideas from Comic Relief are sustainable because the loans and the malaria nets are cheap, and that means that Uganda and Tanzania don't get into lots of debt and have to spend ages paying back Comic Relief.
Does that mean, like, all these things they do when they're sustainable means that they'll last into the future and not just for a little while?
That's exactly right, Sydney. They're going to last into the future and help Uganda and Tanzania become more developed countries over time.
Oh,
Okay?
yeah.
That's your next case study, Year 11. Uganda and Tanzania Comic Relief Aid Project.
With reference to a case study you have looked at, explain the sustainability of an aid project that you have looked at.